one of them and I asked them, how is this happening? And they told So exchange linkages and partnerships. Thank you.
What should happen, etc. But just to say, yes, we started on, we went on, I think somehow well, but there were some challenges and there are lessons. And after this lesson,
we are the technical arm that is mandated to coordinate every matter around higher education and research in the region. So as the 7 partner states, they look upon us to advise them on matters related to higher education and research. In addition to that, we are mandated to seek opportunities for the young people of East Africa, the youth, both, and promote opportunities, equal opportunities for them, including those with disabilities. Today I haven't heard the word disability, so I'm mentioning it here. The word youth has been shared. I heard somebody saying there over 100 high institutions of learning. We have over 100 partner institutions with us, 140 partner institutions with us. The millions of people in universities and...
But relatedly, before I go to other panelists, in view of the guided trade initiative and your experience working on, I know countries have been developing what we call the national implementation plans for the African Continental Free Trade Area. How do you synchronize, how does the GTI, for instance, feed into the provisions and the interventions that are being set out the national implementation strategies for which you may be privy to, by giving examples in the countries along the East African community? It would be nice to know how the national implementation strategies feed into the GTI and whether the GTI feeds into the other national implementation strategies. If you could comment on that, Doctor, before I move to the next. Thank you.
Yeah, many countries, I think Rwanda did their internal of the national implementation strategy about 2 years ago, about 1.5 years ago. So I think Kenya had their own, which spelled out how they would want this relationship to work or how to benefit. In other words, strategizing a country to benefit, because this whole thing is big. How do you, this big cow that has been slaughtered, how do you cut a piece for yourself to be able to benefit? I'm aware that Uganda as a country has done quite...
As well as helping to utilize the skills and implementation of these policies to further enhance and strengthen the economy within the region. That's my question to you.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. A loaded one, but let me give it this short and this perspective. So being the technical arm of the East African community and the advisory unit, our mandate number 1 is to advise the 7 partner states. And given the space we are working in with the young people, we look at the gaps that are presented, the gaps that are presenting themselves. I'm going to mention some of them, and then we address these gaps specifically. So one of the ones that comes to mind very fast is, for example, our education system hasn't been harmonized. So you have, let's say you are an employer and you are looking for somebody to employ. You are not very sure whether you have an organization in Kenya. You're not very sure whether the potential employee from Uganda is properly trained. You're also not very sure whether they have the skills that you require for the job. You're also not very sure whether the regulation in the country where you're working can allow you to employ the Ugandan. So our first point of entry was to harmonize the education system so that there is comparability, there is compatibility. For example, in Kenya, the highest level of secondary education is Form 4. In Uganda, the highest level of secondary education is called Senior 6, is it? But the one in Senior 6 goes to university for 3 years. The one who goes to Form 4 goes to university for 4 years. And afterwards, they enter the job market. You're not very sure. So the first entry point for IUSEA was to harmonize the education system. This is our first policy intervention, so that there is comparability, there is compatibility, and there is portability. You can carry your qualifications to move to the next place and work. Now, this is one, higher education intervention. There is another point where we address industry players. Industry players, the training that we get, and we hear it many times, at least I saw it when Safaricom came to Kenya. They said they had to take the engineers for retraining. The graduates that were coming from the universities, they had to go for 6 months retraining so that they can function. One of the things which we do is we need to address the skills so that people can participate in the market. We look at this avenue by identifying a partner, identifying an institution, and then we have what we call a center of excellence. Then this center of excellence receives students from across the region, and then their training is harmonized and it meets requirement. Then we work with industry so that industry can then be able to absorb them into the market. Allow me to hold on to that there in Linda.
Thank you so much. So what I'm hearing from you is that you're responding to the needs of industry, and you are working with the different governments in the region to harmonize the skills that are going back into industry, so that then we do not have disadvantages that are experienced by public sector, private sector. There's a uniformity in which then we can experience these gaps that, filling in the gaps that are existing, yeah?
Exactly.
All right, great. Then my next question now, following on that, is to Martin. You've said you're an alumnus of the Center of Excellence in Arusha. My question to you is that he speaks on policy, Meshach speaks on what they're doing with regard to harmonization of curricula. To you, as an alumnus and let's say a beneficiary of such kind of centers and projects, what would you say are the metrics and indicators that can be employed to ensure tangible impact of enhanced digital skills on business growth, job creation, and economic development? Basically, what shows you that these things are actually working? So maybe if you can elaborate on that.
Okay, thank you. As Senate at EA alumni, first of all,
Uganda, what are some of your steps and initiatives or interventions made to prepare the private sector of Uganda to partake of the benefits that are put to the African Continental Free Trade Area? What has been your supportive role, and what are some of the key specific interventions from you as a Private Sector Foundation Uganda? Thank you.
Thank you so much. As PSFU, I first for instance, in Uganda, 47% is the logistics nightmare. So right from the inputs to the factory, from the factory to the market, you can imagine that. So imagine if you're now taking your product to Ghana, to Nigeria, to South Africa, and the rest of Africa. So the price is going to skyrocket. So what that means is you're not going to be competitive. You will be beaten at entry, as if you're really lucky to enter. But also, from the supply side, we have a very big challenge. So we took the business community, and I'll give probably this example and stop there for a moment. So we took the business community to Dubai to look for market. These guys told us we need goats. Ugandans, including our Minister of Finance, were excited that, oh, we have a lot of goats in Uganda. So this guy said, we want white goats. I said, okay, we can get you white goats. Then they said, we want over 5,000 goats per month. The minister himself looked in his farm. He could probably supply half a month. So essentially, there was a market for goats, but we realized we don't have goats. So for instance, under the GTI, there is one of our, as the top products, one of our major export products, except for gold, which is coffee. So if a market asked for, say, one market within Africa, about 600, say, 70 bags, 7,000 bags of coffee per month, are you of 60 kgs, which is normally the measure we use, are you able to supply that coffee? Because that's the entire production that we have almost as a country. Actually, the May report shows about 640-something thousand, and we are very proud that we've really gone through the roof. So the point I'm making is, to me, we have to take care of the productivity, quality, but ensure that, again, some of these constraints, just like the NTBs the minister talked about, my chairperson talked about, are resolved. We have thousands of metric tons of powdered milk in stores of our companies like Pearl Dairies, Brookside, just because over 80 export permits have been since March not renewed by the Kenya Dairy Authority for whatever reasons we don't know. Brookside laid off 50% of the employees. The rate of milk went from about 1,500 to 600 and around 600, 500 Ugandan shillings. So now, when you look at the entire structure of FCFTA, ESC is looked at as a model, right? But may I look at it in a perspective of one-eyed man among the blind. Because if we still have those constraints, yet we are the benchmark, how are we then going to go to West Africa and other markets? So those constraints we need to take care of even before we do this experiment and see whether or not it works. Before you test a vehicle, whether or not it's safe and all other requirements, you need to really put in your all, invest in R&D, technology, invest in all safety measures, then you can test the vehicle such that then when you find some issues, for those of you experts in vehicle manufacturing, you're taking care of minor issues, not experimenting something and you find after the experiment you're going back to zero. Thank you so much.
Yes, and you've almost preempted the question that I had from my brother from the civil society organization CIAT in Uganda, who have worked quite as the roles, I think, over the last decade. I start from where Dr. stopped. The East African community did look at model integration, highly integrated economic and we are believing that for the FCA to work, we must use the RECs as building blocks. But if we are still grappling with such challenges as alluded to by the Private Sector Foundation, what would be your take on the likelihood, or what is your view on this, the likely success on how fast we can achieve the highly integrated African Continental Free Trade Area, and where we ensure that even the dream of attaining 50% of intra-Africa trade can be achieved? What would be your take, and what's your experience from the civil society perspective?
Thank you so much. My name is Herbert Lafero. I work with Southern and Eastern Africa. Processes. In simple terms, trade, investment, and fiscal processes work for the people, especially the and also the stakeholders, including the MSME, private sector, among others. In line with really what you said, I would like to first underscore that as CIAT, we believe that the FCFTA presents numerous opportunities. It has potential. Really. That's what I have to say, because I don't want to water down the FCFTA. It has potential, but there is the reality. There are practical challenges that MSMEs, the private sector, are still struggling with, and some of them have been structural. It's not that they are just new. They have been around. Earlier today, the Deputy Secretary General noted that we need to move from paper to actual implementation. I think although frameworks are very important, and indeed they are, because they create the structure, they guide how trade should be, and also beyond those frameworks, now we need to say.
So one of the things that we found very vivid there that has blossomed into another partnership that could explode the industry is what you know as Lipa na M-Pesa in the Kenyan market vis-a-vis MomoPay here. So we asked ourselves, we have businessmen that cross the border to go and buy things in Kenya.
MSMEs even don't have market information, because our Uganda Export Promotion Board over the years has been decrying the issue of limited funding. In fact, at one point here in Uganda, Parliament failed to approve the budget for Uganda Export Promotion Board because they didn't have a functioning board, governance board, among others. And such institutions are critical towards in line with disseminating market information, because if the MSMEs don't even know what AFCFTA is, how will they penetrate or sell their products? And even beyond that, there's the whole issue of strategic products. As Uganda, I think we have so many strategies. For AGOA, we have one. For EU, we have, so many strategies out there. But for us to really benefit from the FCFTA, we need, I think, to have a robust strategy that integrates all those markets, and even have strategic products where we say, if our niche is in really coffee growing, let's be clear on a market. Like, there's a market, and now the strategic product is coffee. Then work backwards, mobilize production. I would like to comment on what my comrades here shared, that of course, if there's a market, if a market is out there, and what needs to be done is mobilize production, I think that's not too hard to do, because really there are no incentives for production at the moment. In Uganda here, we don't have a minimum price for agricultural products, and that would have been an incentive for production. Because if you are to look at simple products like pineapples on the street, I mean, they are flooding the street. And if 10 pineapples or 5 or 6, between 5 and 10 can go for as low as 10,000. That's less than $5. It means at the farm gate, the price was very low, even lower than that. So at the end of the day, the private sector, the producers need incentives to produce. But also beyond that, the FCFTA, the way we look at it at Siatini, is more like any other market. And we should start from the REX level, because if we don't address the challenges that we are struggling with, for example, the non-tariff barriers, the Economic Commission for Africa did some research some time back and revealed that NTBs impede trade more than tariff barriers. So the need to address NTBs will actually unlock our potential to trade under the FCFTA. But also, if we are to look at the Guided Trade Initiative, Uganda is not a participating country. And have we addressed the challenges that curtailed us from being enrolled under the GTI? I think that's yet to be really addressed adequately, because countries had to have to submit tariff schedules. They had to put in place a coordination office, among other things that were required. If you are to look at the Guided Trade Initiative, why really countries, some of the countries failed. But also, as Uganda, are we learning from other participating countries? Because we need to draw lessons from those that are already participating. What are the successes, if any? What are the challenges, the actual challenges? There is one time we had a regional engagement, and we had participants from Ghana, from Kenya, and they shared experiences of how the products being exported to Ghana took 3 months. So the issues of shipping lines, the dwell time, those are all long-standing challenges. In fact, World Bank at a point did research that revealed that we have a funding deficit of 48 billion US dollars, and that is curtailing the competitiveness of the private sector and even of MSMEs to trade. So such issues are those realities that we need to face. But also the manner in which sensitization has been done. You know, in the spaces where I've been, you hear sensitization being done in a manner that there's a market out there. You go, there's a market out there. But it's not free entry. There are prerequisites to enter that market. Standards are part of the prerequisites. And of course, there is need for support from government to actually prepare the private sector in order to penetrate such a market. And the private sector needs to be guided on the products. What are the strategic products for the country? There needs to be some mobilization of the private sector, of the producers, to enter such markets. But also moving from this rhetoric, because there is a lot of rhetoric. Of course, the Guided Trade Initiative is meant to build momentum for trading under the FCFTA. But I think the momentum is yet to be built, because from what my colleagues have already shared, that even the national implementation strategy is yet to be put out there. It means we are still really moving at, should I call it a tortoise pace or a crocodile pace? I don't know which one is slower, but we are slow in that regard. Thank you. I think I can stop there for now.
Thank you very much. You hear the voices of civil society in regard to the readiness and preparedness for us to partake of the advantages presented by AFCTF. I'll still come back to you, Dr. Shi, and I want you to, since you are really a teacher, you will help to demystify some of these other academic terms. There has been an outcry from the policy side that